Mac Power Users, episode 491, Working Hard in the Gaming Industry with Simone de Rochefort. Hello, everybody. This is David Sparks, joined with my pal Stephen Hackett. How are you today, Stephen?
I'm good, David. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking. And real happy to have a guest with us. Welcome to the show, Simone de Rochefort.
Hello. I'm very happy to be here.
Yes, Simone, you've been on our list. We're glad you were able to make time for us. And
yay! But not quite at episode 500, huh?
Well, you know,
not quite that big a name.
You made it under the wire. Let's put it that way, right?
Yeah, I'll tell everyone I was in the top 500 episodes of Mac Power Users.
Steven was saying, let's wait till 502 for Simone. I'm like, no way. We got to get her in at 491.
This is the countdown to 500. You know, it's or the count up to 500. Anyways, I don't know what's happening.
I'm not sure exactly how that works.
We're talking about MPU 500, though. So real quick, I would like to remind people that I am still collecting listener questions to ask of David in our live show for the 500th episode. So just tweet with the hashtag MPU500. And there's also a forum thread over on talk.macpowerusers.com where you can ask questions there. David is not looking at these. Someone was like, can he cheat? It's like, no, David is a man of his word. He said he wasn't going to look. So we're going to believe that he's not going to look. So you can ask freely in the public. And I'm, like I said, I'm collecting those, putting those in my basket for later.
I never peeked at my Christmas presents, man. I never did that.
I never went around in your parents' closets trying to hunt stuff down.
I did one year. There was a present that was partially unwrapped, and I saw early that I was getting some Micronauts, which dates me, but it made me a little sad. You know, even as a little 10-year-old Sparky, I had a little existential crisis. Like, well, now that's not a surprise anymore, is it?
Wow, look at this Wikipedia page. Sorry, I'm reading about Micronauts now. I'm going to put this in the show notes for people.
I should be honest here. I don't know what those are.
Yeah, I'm old. I'm sorry.
You can explain them. I'd love to be educated.
They were just little action figures. I don't know. They were as big as my fist when I was 10, but now they're probably like 3 inches or something.
Wow.
It was a thing.
Okay.
It was a thing.
I've learned a lot about you.
Back in the day. It was a thing.
They only made it for 4 years. That's so sad.
Yeah, short lifespan for those Micronauts.
This is a very 80s-tastic logo and font on the 1977 cover of an official Mego Micronauts catalog.
Oh yeah, that was a cool toy. They made a lot of great toys back then. Let's say I had one that was like a little helicopter.
Huh.
I had the Planet of the Apes action figures because that was a thing.
I feel like I've seen the Biotron, this red, white, and blue Biotron. That looks culturally familiar to me.
Yeah, I'm not even looking at the page because if I do, then you guys will lose my attention for the next 30 minutes. So I'm intentionally not looking.
Surprise! This is what the podcast is about now.
So I just like those Micronauts, I'm not going to spoil the questions. I'm going to be there, and you're going to get whatever you ask. I guess I have to answer. Is that the way it works? I'm nervous now.
You know more about putting people under oath, I guess, than I do, since you're a lawyer and I'm just a podcaster, but I think you're probably going to be under oath.
Oh man, this is getting scary.
Wait.
It's getting scary.
Is he going to swear?
I don't know. Well,
is it legal to put someone under oath without make a judge making him swear?
I don't know.
Swearing a stack of Micronauts.
Go into eBay right now.
No, don't do that. Anyway, Simone, thank you for coming on the show, getting in here under the 500 wire. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you.
Simone does a lot of things. Tell us about some of the stuff you create, Simone.
Well, hey, I create a podcast right here on Relay FM. Yeah. I'm on the Rocket podcast with Christina Warren and Brianna Wu. That's been running for 3 years now. It's a weekly tech podcast, although we spend a lot of time talking about... It started as tech, just, your regular tech, and as time has gone on, we've really honed in on disastrous security issues and scams. So that's a fun occupation of our minds every week, is just the ways in which our culture has become very... I think we're encouraged to be lax with our our data and our existence for purposes of marketing. So that's something that kind of preoccupies me every week as I talk about fun tech, really selling that. It's a fun podcast. We have a good time. It is actually a very fun podcast.
It is very fun.
And then in my day job, I am a senior video producer at Polygon, which is Vox Media's entertainment network. And I co-host Polygon's flagship podcast, which is called The Polygon Show. With my 3 co-hosts, we talk about video games and entertainment, loosely defined, every week. And both record on Wednesday, I should mention. So my Wednesdays are my podcast days.
Are you just wiped out at the end of Wednesday?
I am emotionally destroyed. I talk about this a lot, but even though recording a podcast, it's so physically easy. I just sit down, I put a microphone in front of my face, and I talk. There is this emotional weight that comes with it where, for example, if we record Rocket on a Tuesday, I finish recording Polygon Show on Wednesday afternoon, and I feel like, whoa, the week is wide open. I'm not recording Rocket tonight. I have years of time between now and the next Rocket. Who knows what I will do? So I don't know. I think there's an emotional, like a seriousness that comes over me.
I love how Vox names their podcasts. Like it is, the show is what it is. Like y'all are the Polygon Show. Like the Verge podcast is just Vergecast. Like I like the simple branding Vox has going on. I think it really works.
Thank you. I mean, you are on a podcast called Mac Power Users.
That's true.
Which could not be more.
That's true. MPU is it's the
You've done it yourself.
It's the most literally named though. Like what does upgrade to mean? That's not a podcast name. That's just a word.
What's Rocket?
Yeah. That's a space show.
And even Mac Power Users, I mean, when we made it, the only thing Apple really made was the Mac. But now you've got the iPhone, the iPad, Apple TV, maybe a pair of glasses coming down the road, a watch. And we talk about all that stuff. So the name is a little bit deceiving as well.
That's true. That's true. Should be APU, Apple Power Users.
Yeah, I feel like we'd probably have Apple Legal coming after us at that point.
A very good point. That's one thing I gained by being an official Polygon podcast.
How did you get in this world, Simone? I mean, what got you interested in this stuff to begin with, and how did you start, getting your word out there?
Gosh, it actually started when I was in college, and I went to the University of Washington, Bothell campus. And it's actually, I think for me, my career has been very simple to follow in that a lot of it is being in the right place at the right time and having the skills and being in the right place at the right time. So when I was in college, I worked for a student-run website called The Next. That was part of what was at the time the Center for Serious Play, and became the Digital Future Lab. And it started off as kind of a hangout space for people to play video games. And quickly, a bunch of people said, this is a use of the university's money, and we're changing it. And it became a space both for publishing that website, The Next, and also then later for designing games in partnership between the university's CSS department and a interdisciplinary department that focused on, like, there could be UI classes, there could be narrative classes, a lot of things like that. So they made those students kind of work together as they would in a traditional game studio. I did not do that. I ran the website for a while, basically just coercing my fellow students into writing articles. And after I graduated, I was able to interview for a position at a startup website that became Pixelkin, which was basically a website, a traditional news website, but specifically for parents who were either curious about video games or knew about video games and played them with their kids and just wanted news that was geared towards them. So I started writing for that website. And then I went to E3. Interestingly, a person got me a pass to E3 as an employee, not an employee, as a guest of Konami, which I was not. But I went to E3 and I took a video camera, and it was just like a crappy little camera, crappy little handheld camera, Sony, I think. And I shot some vlogs from E3, and I edited them in iMovie, which is where I started out. And then I decided, oh, this is really fun. What if video? What if video for Pixelkin? What if this was my job? So I kind of took upon myself, and my boss bestowed upon me the title of video producer at Pixelkin. There's a very easy to follow chain of the things that I did in school and leading up to my job. But the job that I ended up in is not one that I trained for professionally.
What was your major?
Culture, literature, and the arts.
All right. You know, I can see that with gaming.
The great thing about UW, sorry, go on.
I just can't, well, you know, I don't need to explain it, but I think that kind of makes sense for me.
Yeah. UW is kind of like the weird hippie satellite of University of Washington Seattle campus, in that it's much smaller, tiny little classes, and the buzzword is interdisciplinary. Everything is focused on like getting different disciplines to work together. So as part of the CLA program, I took classes on video games and honestly thought that I would go into game development while I was at school. And I'm very glad that I ended up where I am.
I find that track so interesting that your school took that approach. I got some of that in college, but it's because I did the college newspaper. And so I got to do some of that hands-on stuff that you were doing. But I feel like schools, even today, you know, we've both been out of school for a little while now. I feel like so oftentimes these programs are so rigid. And the truth is there's so many interesting jobs and opportunities kind of around the edges where different things meet. And it sounds like that's really where you ended up. Maybe, like you said, right place, right time.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% believe that some of the most important experiences you can have in school involve the work that you're doing at school. I was just listening to a podcast called Bad with Money the other day, and they were talking about work experience and how millennials often have trouble applying for jobs because they'll say like required 3 or 4 years working in this field. And the advice that the host offered was, you know, don't treat your working at the high school or the college newspaper as a fake job. Treat it as part of that work experience that you have, because it will be relevant to you and it will help you in the long run. I totally agree with that.
The other thing I like is that I'm pretty sure when you made that first video, you didn't do it as a job application. You didn't do it thinking, oh, this could be a career. You probably just made it because you wanted to make it.
Honestly, it baffles me a little bit because I can't remember what the thought process was really of like, yes, there was no thinking like I will make this beautiful vlog and I will parlay it into a successful video making career. That did not occur to me. It was just like, I'm going somewhere really, really cool. And I can show that to people, because E3 at that point was still, I think it was the first year, or it was the last year before they offered passes to the public. So at that time, I was going into it like, oh my God, I'm going behind the curtain. What? So for me taking the camera, it was like, oh, this is so cool. No one else, people rarely see this, you know?
I think it's shocking how often our lives' paths start as a diversion. It's just like just a little side trail we're going to take, and all of a sudden it turns into the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Ugh. And then it's terrifying to think like, what if I didn't? What if I hadn't done that? Somewhere in the multiverse, there's a Simone who, I don't know.
Yeah, don't go there.
So you ended up shooting at E3, and now you're at Polygon, which of course is a massive site, hugely respected in game journalism. How was that transition going from this is something I'm just trying to kind of your current responsibility? And what does that look like these days for you at Polygon?
Boy, did I get in at the right time. So when I applied to work at Polygon, the video team was very small. In fact, my executive producer was hired a week after I started. So my first week that I was at Polygon officially, we were doing job interviews for that position. And, you know, I was on a couple calls just like meeting the prospective candidates. And that was weird as a person who had literally just started that week. It was like, oh, cool. So because the video program was not very organized at that point, I was able to grow up with it, essentially. I think you can see that if you've been following Polygon on YouTube for a few years, like we were finding our footing for a few years. We had some comedy series like Monster Factory. We would publish a lot of gameplay videos that were just like, here, your standard YouTube game video, which is look at this amount of gameplay with no commentary over it to see how the game works. Oh, we would publish interviews, and there was, I think, we were just exploring to see what would hit. And so that was great for me as a person who, like I said, did not have a lot of experience in the industry. I had worked at a very small website and a college website. So I was able to learn along with the rest of the team and land on the strategy that we have now, which is publishing informative and also irreverent pieces that are thinking about and engaging with games and the culture around games, rather than just publishing raw gameplay, which I'm kind of glad we don't do anymore.
Yeah, but it is interesting you got to be there for that whole development cycle. And so you really are part of kind of the DNA of all of that.
Oh my God. Yeah. There was a time when we would just, like, I was thinking back on this the other day before my boss started / around the time that she had started, but we were still finding our way. There was a time when I just put stuff on the channel, like just make a thing. Oh yeah, I'll make this. I'll put it on the channel, whatever. And now, of course, we have a whole different system for making sure stuff is good. We have quality control. Wild concept. But yeah, it really was for us the Wild West, not for the rest of YouTube. The rest of YouTube knew what it was doing, but we were finding our way.
So you talked about being in the right place at the right time, but it's also what I hear is somebody who took advantage of the right opportunities when they presented themselves. If someone was listening to this and they wanted to kind of follow your footsteps, get involved with this type of work, what would your advice be?
That is a very good question. I would say the biggest things that has helped me is just being aware that there is, I don't think that there's anything that you can do beyond, burning bridges with people. There's nothing you can do that will ruin your career or set your career in stone in a way where you're trapped here now. You can never change it. Because for me, it was a parenting website and then a parenting gaming website. And then now I'm at Vox Media, where I am making videos about video games in a more thoughtful way. And I think for me, what helped was both just treating every opportunity as something that was worth pursuing, even if at the beginning when I interviewed with Pixelkin, it wasn't, I didn't have the thought of like, I wasn't thinking, this is what I want to do for the rest of my career. It was a great job. I loved it. I loved the opportunity. But it was never like, here we are. Here we've arrived at my career. And then the other thing I think would be to learn new skills and don't be afraid to try things, even technical things that you don't have experience with. Because at one point that was video production for me. And I started learning from Adobe's tutorials on YouTube because I had to make a video for work. And I was like, how do I do this? Or actually, no, because I started in iMovie. Oh, gosh, what a time. But eventually, I graduated to Premiere and the Adobe tutorials. My gosh. And then, finding classes that happened after work where I could go to a place and somebody would teach me about cameras, things like that. So do find those opportunities to learn more things and try new things, even if they seem very technical and very difficult from the outset.
Yeah, one of the conclusions Mike Schmitz and I made on the Focus podcast is that the lesson everybody needs to learn is that you never actually arrive.
Absolutely. Oh my God. My mom says that to me all the time. And it's I find it very reassuring. She says, okay, no adult actually knows what they're doing. And I find that so comforting because it's like, oh, yes, it's okay to feel like I'm in progress. That's just how everyone feels. Even my mother, the most competent person that I know.
This episode of MPU is brought to you by 1Password. 1Password comes into your life when you need it the most, when you have to deal with online accounts and passwords. It creates strong, unique passwords, and the best part is you don't have to remember them. You don't want to be that person writing them down the back of a napkin. No. 1Password stores them securely, and makes it really easy to access them on all of your devices. So if you're at home or you're in the office, if you're on your Mac or your iPhone or your iPad, they're easily accessible. A great feature is 1Password for Teams. We use this at work, and it lets us create different vaults for different team members. So there are passwords for Mike and I only, and then we have some that we share with other people we work with. And I can manage all of that from the 1Password dashboard. So if someone needs a password reset or need to change their access to certain things, it's all really easy to do. A great feature of 1Password is their secure notes. I've talked about this in previous ads. I use it for all sorts of things. Bits of information that I know I want to have safe and secure and encrypted where no one else can see them. So not only things like bank information or credit card information or passwords go into 1Password for me, but all sorts of data that I want secure. If you want to learn more and sign up for a free 30-day trial, head on over to onepassword.com/MPU. And when you're there, sign up and you'll get 20% off. Once again, that's onepassword.com/MPU for a free 30-day trial and 20% off when you sign up. Simone, let's talk about gear a little bit. What are you using day to day to get your work done?
Ooh, so right now I am using a 2015 15-inch MacBook Pro. I had the new people who came to Vox with the new MacBooks. They're on the ones that have the touch bar and the fun keyboards and everything. But I got in under the wire, and they want to take this laptop from me because there was some kind of key or battery issue. They say that they might be overheating. No, they will pry this laptop out of my dead hands. I am not going.
You can have it when it's on fire.
That's why I'm not on the Upgrade podcast, because I am clinging to this MacBook Pro. And then I have an iMac, which is also a 2015. It's the 27-inch late 2015 iMac. And those are the primary machines that I use to edit. Usually I will use the desktop, but I do like having the option to switch over to the laptop. And for that, I usually will I start my projects in Dropbox, and they live there until they die.
I've got this image of Simone in my head right now, sitting behind a laptop, just madly typing. And then the clicks, you would see the little clicks, like in a cartoon, how you see the clicks, because it has the better keyboard.
Yes,
flames are coming out of it. And
my
she
wonderful
says,
scissor switch keyboard.
Yeah, and flames are coming out, and she just says, mine. That's all she says. Mine. Yeah.
I think I am probably just for kicks going to have a link in the show notes to the battery recall, just so people go check that out.
No, it's fake.
Yeah, we didn't mention that. We didn't mention that. Mac Power users didn't mention that. Oh, by the way, some of the older MacBooks do catch on fire these days. I don't know. I don't want to misspeak. Have they caught on fire? I guess they just have a risk of catching on fire. I believe
they said uncomfortably hot. I think that was the...
Apple says the battery may overheat and pose a fire safety risk on apple.com. So,
all right.
Whatever.
You should probably just plug your serial number into this page, Simone. You make me feel better.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the older 15-inch ones, the ones with the before the questionable keyboard. So
yeah, I've got a mid 2015.
There's a link in the show notes. Go see it.
All right. I've got my serial number.
Okay.
Where in the show notes is this?
I'll put it in the Google Doc for you. We can do this live on the show. We can see if your computer...
Do you want to? Because I will. We can always edit it out.
I want to know. I want to know right now.
Oh, goodness.
We need to know, because
right.
if we hear like flame noises on the other side of the microphone, and we need to take action on your behalf.
Yes, that's definitely the first sound you will hear. Yeah, the serial number you entered may be eligible for this program.
Oh no.
Oh boy.
You should do that.
I will when IT takes it from me. Folks, this is the benefit of working at a big company. Sometimes you're made to use legacy software that you hate, and sometimes your IT department is focusing on a bunch of different people, and they can't take your malfunctioning MacBook from you in a prompt manner. They're busy ordering new MacBooks. And again, they will take it from me when I am dead from flames.
Well, in the meantime, why don't we run a charging cable into your refrigerator and just charge it in there at night?
Yeah, that's
fine.
fine.
Okay, right, Steven?
I mean, I haven't been a Mac genius in a long time, but that sounds pretty right to me.
Yeah. Or if worst case, the freezer, but that may be a separate problem.
Y'all are making me nervous.
Well, I mean,
I actually am a little nervous, Simone.
Oh no! Find me one person whose MacBook has caught on fire. Don't fact check me.
Well, don't leave it charging overnight on a wood furniture. Just do me that favor.
Yeah, don't do that. What about iOS? You've got an iPhone, I assume, but
oh yeah,
does that play into
me.
work, or is your work pretty Mac centric with all the video stuff?
So it didn't at first, because at Pixelkin I initially worked off of my Windows laptop. And then my boss did buy an iMac for video editing purposes. So I started using it because why would I not? Oh my God, I had a really crappy, I think it was an Asus laptop. And this was, again, like 2014, 2013 that I was using this. It was my personal computer because we were a startup. So I didn't, get fancy equipment at first. But then I got the iMac. Lovely. And once I had always been a person who used Windows, not for, I think, any specific loyalty, but just because that was what I had grown up with in my house. And at this time, I'm 28, and I did not have a smartphone yet. I was using, I'm sorry, I can't remember but I had one of those Razr phones, and then I got one that like slid up, and it was very fun, but it wasn't a smartphone. So I was not on smartphones yet when I graduated college and started working at Pixelkin. And then I started recording Rocket. And Christina Warren, if you've listened to Rocket, is a huge Apple fangirl. And I wanted an iPhone. I wanted it so badly. And then the 5C came out, and I thought, my God, look at that. It's an iPhone for people who are cheap, like me, a recent college graduate. It's a colorful iPhone. It's fun for me, a recent college graduate who's a fun person. How great. And so I bought the pink iPhone 5C, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And from there, it was all downhill from there, because I switched over I was using Mac OS at work on the iMac. I had the iPhone. I had actually bought an iPad 2 in college. I don't know why, just because I wanted one. It compelled me, I think, because it was pretty. And it just all went, downhill from there. I realized I really genuinely do think it is a better OS. I enjoy using it more. I find it more logical. I find it more organized. So when it came time to buy a new laptop, I did buy, again, the 13-inch MacBook Pro, a 2015 model, which is still the laptop that I use at home. I should probably see if it's going to catch fire. But I don't want to, because, again, until they release the new Scissor Switch laptop, I will use that laptop until it catches fire or I die.
I think you're in good shape. The recall is just the 15-inch, so you're safe and sound.
That's because the 13-inch 2015 MacBook is a MacBook Pro, I should mention, is the perfect device.
It's a really good laptop.
It's solid. It's chunky. It functions. It's a functional beast. And it's a good size. I love it so much.
I do think, because, there's a very active rumor now that the next MacBook Pro, and even possibly an update to the MacBook Air, is going to have a new keyboard system, return to scissor switches, and or something like it. And I feel like it's going to be like a pent-up demand situation where suddenly there's like massive sales of MacBooks when that happens.
Is that their plan? They're boosting stocks. They're creating a shortage.
Yes.
They've been using the butterfly keys for 4 years in an effort to create a situation where they can return to the scissor switch keys and everyone will lose their minds. No, I don't believe that. Don't print that.
Steven will buy two just because.
Oh, heck yeah.
I've got the current MacBook Pro, the new 8-core one, and that's fine. But yeah, the keyboard feels like a clicking time bomb. That's a topic for a different time. Mm-hmm. So, Simone, you mentioned that you had an iPad 2 in school. Has the iPad graduated to a more important place, or is it still sort of a secondary side device for you?
The iPad aged out, and I sent it back to Apple just this last year, actually.
Okay.
I think for me, the phone replaced what I did on the iPad, and what I did on the iPad was mostly what I would have done on a phone had I had a smartphone. I literally would, take selfies with my iPad. I used it for Instagram and Tumblr and for watching anime because, of course, I could load videos onto it and take it on trips and stuff. And I also used it to write because I actually write pretty well on mobile platforms. I think it's something about being able to focus because there's only one thing on the screen at a time. So I would, I write recreationally fiction, so I would write on it or take notes on it. And it just got slower and slower and slower to the point where opening a single app was horrendous. So I sent it back to Apple this year.
So no iPad.
No new iPad. I've not really found a place for that in my life right now.
This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by TextExpander. Head over to textexpander.com/podcast to get 20% off. It's time to give your productivity a boost with TextExpander. With TextExpander, you can turn the things you often type into snippets and use them everywhere you type. Your time is too valuable and life is too short to constantly retype what could be a snippet. Everybody can think of the obvious examples like their cell phone number or their address, but I bet there's something in your life you find yourself typing repeatedly. Why don't you turn that into a snippet with TextExpander? Companies are using TextExpander for Teams, for customer support, reports, email, and anywhere else they need to be consistent and accurate with text. I use it with all my Mac Sparky stuff. When someone sends an email in, me or my assistant often send TextExpander-based snippets back to answer common questions and just make sure that we get the right information out. TextExpander is available for Mac OS, Windows, iPhone, and iPad, and even Chrome. Show listeners get 20% off their first year by going to textexpander.com/podcast, where you can learn more about TextExpander and sign up. Just make sure to let them know you heard about it on the Mac Power Users. The thing I love about TextExpander is its power. It goes so far beyond any other snippet program. As we've talked about on the show, you can add Apple scripts and automation. You can do fill-ins, so when you do an email, you can fill in the name or a particular piece of information, and it just really ups your game in terms of your automation. If you spend any significant percentage of your day writing text, then you need TextExpander to help you get all that work done faster and more accurately. So head over to textexpander.com/podcast. You'll get 20% off when you let them know you heard about it at the Mac Power Users. And finally, we just wanted to thank Smile for all of their support of the Mac Power Users over the years. Well, that makes a lot of sense for someone who does as much video production as you, because that's one of the use cases where the Mac is definitely superior.
I've been curious about video editing on the iPad because with the new the programs that are available on it, the Adobe Suite being available on iPad Pro now, that's been a possibility. But for me, just because I have a laptop and because I think I'm very attached to using a keyboard and things like that when I'm editing, I don't necessarily see a place for that in my life right now, especially when it comes to working with video game footage, which is something that I do a lot because a lot of it is very, very large files, very large, long files. And I don't want to mess around with getting those on an iPad to work with.
Yeah, we're just on the verge of having some real interesting options for that. I feel like in the next year, like video production on iPad is going to become a lot more normal. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, for someone who is as busy as you are, I can see why you wouldn't want to be the first person to do that. Let somebody else figure it out.
Yeah, let them work out the kinks, and then I will be there. What I would love, oh my gosh, I was on Twit last night, and Leo has that beautiful Microsoft Surface Pro.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, I love that thing so much. I would kill to be able to use one of those, but again, I don't think that the cost makes sense for me or for Vox Media when they can, give everyone iMacs and MacBook Pros and then have us work fine.
Right.
Yeah, and for the listeners who are not familiar, that's like an iMac size Windows computer that's got a really cool hinge in it where you can tilt it to like a draft table and work on it like a massive tablet.
Oh, it's so nice looking. There's just something aesthetically very pleasing about it. It looks like an Apple product. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's priced like one too.
Yeah. And I think like I said, I write pretty well on a touchscreen, and obviously I could get a keyboard for an iPad. But when it comes to all the things that I do for work, such as video, audio, and After Effects, and then also browsing the internet or dealing with YouTube backend stuff or writing emails, it is just easier to use either a laptop or a desktop computer. So for me, that makes sense. Maybe someday I'll change. We'll see.
How much of your work do you do on iPhone, though? I mean, is it something... where does the iPhone fit in your work flows for your actual work?
Mostly in terms of checking and responding to emails, obsessively reading Polygon.com, and of course, the ever-present Slack, which I have on my phone because that's what we use at Relay as well as Vox Media. I don't think I'm logged into Relay Slack on my phone, actually. That's a mistake. I've been
so communications really sounds like.
Yes. Yeah. The phone is for communicating. And then the computers are for generating content.
You had said earlier you write fiction on mobile. Do you still do that on your phone, or do you do that?
Yes, usually not in. So when I'm writing, both for work and for personal stuff, I use Google Drive a lot. That is I'll make outlines in Google Sheets. I will write books and scripts in Google Docs. Yeah, we do a lot of stuff in both of those programs for my work here at Polygon and then for my personal work. But then what is very, very useful to me is notes, which I love. And I will find often, you writers out there will understand, when the idea happens to you, you got to write it down. So what'll happen, of course, is I'm writing on my MacBook Pro, and then I turn out the light and I turn over to go to sleep, and then suddenly more scene is happening in my head, and I'm like, God, no! And I grab my phone, I open notes, I just eyes half closed, typing, and I type really weird on phones. I type with, let me pull up. Yeah, I type with one thumb and one index finger. And it's my right thumb and my left index finger. I don't know why. I think Christina called me out once for being like, oh, you think that that's faster? And I'm like, it's not. I don't think it's faster. It's just that this is how I learned to do it, and I can't do it with two thumbs.
I'm trying to do it.
It's never going to happen.
My fingers don't work that way.
With the thumbs or with the index?
With the combination. I'm very confused.
Pourquoi?
I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe this is because I came to smartphones late. Maybe this is what's happened to me. I don't know.
Well, that is the beauty of something like Google Docs. I mean, I work in a very similar way doing all of our show prep. I know y'all do too at Rocket, of people just have access to the Google Doc, and as things come up, you add things in it. And for me, at least, documents aren't really files anymore. They're sort of like ever-present buckets to put things in. And I definitely appreciate that flexibility. It sounds like you do too.
Yeah, they're always changing. And so what I gather from being on this show is, do you guys make a different document for every week?
Yeah.
Okay. What I like to do, and maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe you should tell me, Stephen. I use just the same document for Rocket because I'm the one who will gather the links and put in titles and forget to write descriptions for episodes. And every week I'll just erase last week's episode and write a new one, because part of part of what keeps me sane is not having an excess of files and versions of things. So for me, because the episode is published, it's out there, the show notes are on Relay FM, I don't feel a need to have 400 documents of episodes of Rocket. So I would probably just delete them. I wouldn't let it get that way. But what makes sense to me is just to make a kind of living document that will update every week. And that's what I use for that show and for Polygon Show.
Well, that makes more sense for most shows. Our show is a topic-based show. So like we may be working on an outline right now for a show that's not going to be recorded for 3 or 4 weeks from now. So
that makes a lot of sense.
We have to keep separate buckets. And same thing with guest shows. We try and keep the guest shows different and unique. So I get it. But the way you do it for like a show that has kind of like it's almost like a new show. It's like topical every week. The automation pieces in my head are thinking, man, this would be so much easier if I could just go to the same document every time. But for our show, it doesn't make sense. But I think for a lot of people, they do it the way you do it.
That's good. I'm glad that you guys have a system that works for you. And that totally makes sense. Like if I were planning out, I mean, for our live shows that we do, of course, those get separate documents because we're in there planning up until the 11th hour.
So because you talked about you do writing in both Google Docs and Apple Notes. What's the dividing line for you? How do you know which one makes sense for you?
Usually, so if I'm remote, it will happen in Notes. And then, of course, because I live in the Apple ecosystem, I just open up Notes on my MacBook Pro. Ooh, look, they're right there. And then basically, usually what I do, because I'll be writing snippets of a scene, I will save that in Notes, and it will live there terrifyingly, in danger of accidentally being deleted by me, until I get to that scene in the book that I'm writing. And then I'll just write up to that, and then I'll be like, oh, wait, I've got parts of this. Mm-hmm. And then I'll go get that snippet from Notes, and I'll put it in the Google Doc, which admittedly is probably not the most seamless and sensible workflow that a person could have. But it's what I like to do because working in Notes is it's a casual and creative space for me. So it's nice to go back in there and, find gems that I'd forgotten about, or find that something has been written already and, oh, thank God, I still have it. I do a bad thing. Honestly, I do a very bad thing because sometimes I won't write something down in Notes. Sometimes I'll write it in an email draft, and then I will forget that I do that, and I'll go looking for it in Notes, and it won't be there. And I'll think, what? I have this vivid memory of writing this. Where is it? Where has it gone? It's always in drafts. Always.
Yeah. Well, just quick capture sounds like the problem you're solving. And honestly, Google Docs is not great on the iPhone. I can understand why you'd want to do it somewhere else.
God, yeah, especially if you're working. So if you're on a computer, a document will start getting wonky around 30,000 words, I think. And on the phone, boy, howdy. And I'll still go back and read sometimes on my phone, but using Sheets on the phone is a nightmare. And working with docs, like it's very obnoxious, as you say, because you have to double tap in to edit it, and then you have to click the checkbox. And sometimes you accidentally start editing when you're just reading, and it becomes a danger. It becomes a hazard, a deletion hazard, which I do not appreciate.
Yeah, we have a lot of docs. Like I have a doc that we keep for the show with potential guest names, and somebody will email me an idea, and I will not update it on my iPhone because it's just too much work. I'll just save it to OmniFocus or whatever, and next time I'm at my Mac.
And is that in Docs or Sheets?
It's a doc.
Oh, yeah.
Just real quick, I mean, you talk about games for a living. You want to just share some of your other gaming hardware?
Oh, heck yeah. So I mostly play on, it was PS4 because I love the games on the PS4, and also because I despise the UI of the Xbox One. I think it is bad. But then the Switch happened, the Nintendo Switch. Mm-hmm. And this beautiful little console that is both a handheld and I can seamlessly plug into my TV and play on my TV. Incredible. So now with some exceptions, my PS4 is a very expensive video streaming machine, and my Nintendo Switch is my wonderful companion who comes with me everywhere.
Steven owns all of them. That's his thing, man. Gaming PC.
I mean, you do what you got to do.
We own a Switch now. We have a Switch.
Oh, do you? Have you ever played it, Steven?
Just Mario Kart.
Yeah.
Oh, I finally got Mario Kart for the Switch. I was holding out because, it's 15,000 years old and it's still $60. But I recently got it at PodX. I downloaded it on hotel Wi-Fi because I needed to have a Mario Kart tournament. And then I proceeded to play it so intensely, nonstop for about a week.
Yeah, it's great.
It's a perfect game. Is
the PC, is the Windows side of this, is there any aspect to that? I know there are a lot of games that are over on the PC. I know you have a lot of video capture options and stuff over there. Does that have a place in your world?
That groan you just heard was my groan of pain. So at home, absolutely not. However, you are correct in that there are many games that will be computer only, and they are not made for the Mac. Unfortunately, some are. If the game is available for Mac OS, boy howdy, will I work with that. However, there are many PC games. So here at work, we have a couple PCs. We have a dope system, actually. So we have a little room basically set up for gaming and video capture. And we have all of the consoles. We've got a PC, we've got the Xbox One S, I believe is what I'm seeing over there, and the PS4 Pro, and the Switch, and some, I think that's, PlayStation VR. And we have all of those hooked into a switcher. And the switcher runs through Elgato, basically, which is a small capture device that is basically the gold standard for game capture. It's a little capture card, basically. It's a little black box that has HDMI in, HDMI out, and then USB-C to USB. And basically the way it works is as a pass-through, so you plug your console into the Elgato, and then HDMI out to TV, and then USB out to another machine, another PC or Mac that you are capturing on. So that's great, because then you can have game audio that you're capturing as well as audio coming from your TV, so you can still hear the game that you're playing. And it also has built-in capabilities for recording VO on top of that. There's a bunch of audio settings you can toggle. So basically what we have here, all of those systems I mentioned, running through an Elgato, hooked up to another PC where we do capture, either in Game Capture HD or OBS, which is another wonderful program for capturing video games. And then we also have a set of microphones that run through, it's very complicated, I'm sorry, that run through an audio board into that capture PC so that we can do voiceover. And when we are ready to capture something, basically we can go into OBS and say, okay, do I want just raw gameplay? Do I want gameplay with a little picture-in-picture with our voiceover over it? There's a bunch of options, and it's quite automated at this point because we just got the den redesigned. So everything is working smoothly, and it is a dream.
That makes a lot of sense, though. I mean, I followed along with you, and I do screencasting myself, but screencasting out of different types of consoles and PCs with the ability to add voiceover at the same time, that is not a simple problem to solve.
Yeah, and the big change recently that we did, because it was pretty horrendous for a long time with just, you would look back behind where the consoles were and it was a nest of cables. And it was the most horrible thing I have ever seen. Like, it got to the point where only, one person knew how to do anything because the cable situation, the cable management was so bad. So we had a kind of tech refresh of this room very recently. Somebody came in and just took everything out and put everything back. And now there are many less cables, and we have the audio system is set up now so that we can actually hear ourselves as we're recording, which is something we didn't have the option to do before. Hear ourselves speak on our microphones as we're recording, so we can, be able to check levels without having an extra person at the computer, listening to the entire thing, because we're a really small team and that's not practical.
How much time do you spend in that, what do we call it, Gamenstein? I don't know. I would imagine that's quite a bit of your job is getting those videos produced.
Actually, I spend more time at my desk in Premiere and After Effects, just because we don't do as much raw gameplay capture anymore. Is definitely, we do use the room still. It's very useful. I love you. The room that I'm in. I'm actually in it right now, which is why I keep looking around and talking about things as if you can see them. But it's more because we're not doing streams as much and we're not doing raw gameplay capture as much. We'll come in and record like what we need. And we'll also have meetings in here because Polygon doesn't have a dedicated team room. So this is it, baby.
I mean, even from a non-gamer perspective, just the video workflow. I mean, the thing that I'm still hung up on is there's another PC at the end of the whole process just for capture.
And listen, this is actually the worst part of my job for me as a person, because I still hate working in Windows. And this has, as I said, I grew up in Windows, so this is not a condition that I was born with. But after working on Macs for so long, every time I have to do something on a Windows machine, I want to rip my own skin off. I hate it. I'm sorry. I just hate it so much. Gosh.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
I thought Windows got better. I haven't used it for a long time, but everybody's telling me it's better. Is it still giving you trouble, though, huh?
It's still giving me trouble. I feel like it wants to update all the time. It never asks. Everything is so... and part of this probably comes from the fact that I am using a machine that is shared by a lot of other people. So, of course, every time I log on, there's 1,000 files that someone has left on the desktop, and I'm like, what? Put them on a drive and delete them. Take them or record them onto the drive directly. What are you doing?
Well, that was going to be my next question is like, okay, so you've got this room that does this amazing job of capturing video from basically any type of gaming platform. And you've got a dedicated machine that records it. Then how do you get the footage off of that over to the workstation at your desk where then you start doing production in the video and maybe you want to grab a clip that you made? Is there a system for that?
We all have hard drives, basically, or for those of us who don't, they can yell in the office and somebody will offer one up. But that's pretty much the easiest. Yeah, the sharing economy. The easiest, fastest way to do it is to move it physically on a drive. We could use Dropbox. We use Dropbox regularly. We also have a SAN that we are working off of here, but this computer that we capture with is not connected to that system. So the fastest way to do anything is just record it directly onto a drive, which you can do in both OBS and game capture, and then take it right over to the MacBook or the iMac, which can be it can be annoying because there's drive formatting shenanigans that happens sometimes, and I can't use my beautiful big 1 terabyte Thunderbolt on the Windows machine, which is another reason that it is a flawed, horrible device. But yeah, so that's very simple answer. Hard drives, baby.
I think right now, although he probably wouldn't admit it, there's like some background process in Steven's brain that is like laying network cable in your office right now, right? A little part of you wants to solve this problem, right, Steven?
I have a very reasonable hourly rate.
But you've been doing plumbing all day. Do you really want to come lay cable here?
Just go from house repairs.
Ones and zeros, burst water pipe, doesn't matter.
Actually, I do want you to come fix my toilet.
I know how to do that. I'm very skilled. If podcasting ever goes away, I'll be good as a handy person. This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by Linode. With Linode, you can instantly deploy and manage an SSD server in the Linode cloud and get a server running in just seconds with your choice of Linux distro, resources, and node location. Linode has hundreds of thousands of customers. In fact, Relay FM is one of them, and we're all looked after by their incredible 24/7 support team. If you ever run into any problems, you can drop them an email, give them a call, or even chat over IRC in the Linode community, whatever suits you best. And they have some super useful guides and support documentation, so if you need to quickly look something up, you can. Linode has a new management panel in beta at cloud.linode.com. This new management console is a single-page application. It's built using cutting-edge React.js and is backed entirely by their public API, and it's open source, which is really cool. Linode has pricing options to suit everyone. Their plans at 1 GB of RAM start at just $5 a month. And they offer high memory plans starting with 16 gigabytes of RAM. And Linode has a special offer for you. As a listener of this show, you can go to linode.com/MPU and use the promo code MPU2019 to get $20 off any Linode plan. And on that 1 gig of RAM plan, that's 4 free months. And with a 7-day money-back guarantee, there's nothing to lose. So give Linode a try today. That's linode.com/MPU and the promo code MPU2019 to learn more, sign up, and make the most of that $20 credit. My thanks to Linode for their support of this show and all of Relay FM. So we've talked about some of the technical stuff with the video production, but I'm curious too about how a video comes to be. I know y'all have different series you work on, or sort of different different like flavors or styles of video. And how does that come about? I mean, are y'all sitting down and have a big editorial calendar? Is it more fluid than that? What does that look like?
So we have weekly pitch meetings, which I have been leading because my boss is on maternity leave right now, which makes me the boss. And I'm sure everyone who's been listening to this podcast just gasped in horror, because I'm the boss and I have the power now. But we talk pretty regularly about both what's coming up soon, and I think more importantly, what we either have been playing or have played in the past and that we love. Because I think something that is really our ethos at Polygon right now is people want to read and watch stuff about things they care about. And if you have an interesting new take on, I mean, for example, a piece that came out today was about the 2005 King Kong game that's based on the Peter Jackson movie. Somebody had a reason to revisit that in 2019. And it's fascinating. And I think that there's a lot more value for us in covering things that we know a lot about because they've been part of our lives for so long. There's just a lot more to say. Whereas if we were doing strictly timely stuff, you know, what can you say about upcoming, like if I, for example, were trying to make a video about news from E3, what can I say about those games that hasn't been said both by the companies that are making them and 1,000 other people that are, you know, also talking about the very little that we know about those games right now. So for us, it's much more interesting to revisit older games. There's a lot of ground to cover there still, I think, because much like movies, they're cultural artifacts that, you know, there's a lot to say about. Mm-hmm. So pitch meetings, and people will be assigned ideas to basically go research and write a script about, which they will do in Google Docs. Oh yeah. And we'll work together. I don't know how deep into this process you want me to go. Probably very deep because it's Mac power users.
We're just fascinated with how people get their work done, you know, and how you use all this stuff. And Google Docs does probably solve a lot of problems for you guys because you're probably going to have editorial people looking at the story as it's developing. And that gives you a way to have hands-on at any time. Do you guys have any special, like I know some folks will have like different ink colors for different people that go in and do edits, or how do you track things as you're moving a story along the process?
Yeah, so usually we'll do, I'm a big fan of the suggesting mode, which is basically the Google Docs version of track changes in Word. And I do still use Word actually on my home machine. But because, we want to share documents and make changes live, we will write in Google Docs. Usually what I'll do is I'll create a rough script that is garbage and full of notes and thoughts and things, and then we'll move that into a 2-column script, which is very useful for video production. You have audio on one side and video on the other. And for me, I think I do it a little bit differently, because I think technically you're supposed to do all audio on one side, including like whatever interview clips or sound ups you're going to use. I just do my VO on one side and then anything that is external on the other side. And that allows you, because it's 2-column, you can really time it out. So I can see like I'm talking and then a couple line breaks. And then in the column that is next to my VO, I can put a clip of an interview where somebody's saying something relevant, and then you can follow that directly back to the other column where you'll see the VO continue from there. So you can really create a very simple map of what the video will look like and how it'll flow. And yeah, I'm a big fan of that. And often I'll just write directly into a 2-column because it keeps it very neat. I like confinement in my writing.
That makes sense. I mean, did you start at that model, or did you kind of work your way? Did you iterate to that?
We definitely iterated to that, especially as we started doing more scripted videos instead of like Let's Play style videos.
Yeah.
It just became a necessity, because otherwise, if you are showing your video to someone either in a table read to make sure that the script makes sense, or to your boss to get her approval on it, that person needs to be able to not imagine what you might put on the screen. They need to be able to see like, okay, I'm saying something, and then this is the visual that is supporting it. This is the weird animation that I'm going to do. Because otherwise there's so much left to the imagination.
Now, do you guys do the animation in-house too?
We do, actually. We're a very small team, as I mentioned. So all of us use After Effects. And some of us are more proficient in After Effects than others. And we try to help each other out as much as possible. But we'll all basically do our own text treatments and whatever animations need to be done. Usually it's pretty simple, though, because the great thing that my boss, Chris Grant, always says is that video games are made of video, which makes a lot of the work easy.
Sure.
Because it's just
live.
there. Yeah. You want B-roll? Okay, this game is 100 hours long. Take your pick, baby.
Yeah. How many people work on a typical project? I mean, because it sounds to me like even though you say you have a small team, it still sounds like a lot of collaboration going on there.
Yeah, it's definitely grown that way. It used to be more solitary than it is. And I think it's becoming more and more shared, which I'm very much in favor of. But we'll have a producer who owns the video, basically. And that video becomes a task in Asana, which is a task management system that's a lot like Trello in that, you're making cards and they're parts of projects. But that's great because in Asana, you can make a lot of subtasks and you can assign those subtasks to different people. So the video will be an Asana card on the video project. And then every stage of it will be a subtask. So writing the script is a subtask, getting someone to look at the first draft subtask. And then we will have a table read where a bunch of people, not a bunch, 3 people will get together, including the script writer, and they'll read through the whole thing. And then they'll read through it again and basically edit it as needed to make sure that it makes sense and is funny. I mean, usually that's the stage where personality gets injected back into a script,
sure,
which is really important for me because I can still be a very boring writer because I kind of, in writing paralysis, sorry for all the plosives, I will forget to be a human being, in my effort to explain something clearly. So that's where jokes happen.
But I mean, it seems like the whole workflow was built to be collaborative. I mean, Google Docs and Asana and all these collaboration tools. It makes a lot of sense when you explain it.
I'm glad. Yeah, it's been a long road to standardizing what we have now.
Now, where does Slack fit in this, though? Because I mean, do you also have Slack channels for the individual videos, or is that more generic?
We have generic Slack channels, and there might be, if a large special project comes up, that'll usually get its own. But we have, Slack channels for the video team to and those are mostly just to broadly discuss what we're doing and when we're going to lunch and things like that.
Yeah.
And then everything else will happen in Asana or in Google Calendars. We'll schedule the table reads that I talked about, or we'll schedule shoots or brainstorming sessions. And that's usually where those happen. But we'll trade notes for those usually in either Slack or in a Google Doc. It is kind of a nest. It's a bit of a nest.
What's the hardest part or the biggest friction point from getting a video, from the decision to making a video to the point you ship it? What's the part that's still hard for you?
Oh, gosh. For me personally, it is both brainstorming and then research. Because for me, those are the points where I will second guess myself, or it will just feel kind of aimless because you're looking for a story, or you're looking for the facts to corroborate your story, and you have all these puzzle pieces. You have an internet full of puzzle pieces, and it's hardest at that stage to envision what the video will look like. But once I get into Premiere, that is my favorite part of my job, is just actually physically making the video, editing the video. I find it so soothing. Like I really slip into a flow state when I'm editing, and I really love that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, because at that point, it's pure creation. You've done all the work. Now you're just putting it together.
Yeah. Oh God, when you put it that way, that's so true. And it really makes me think that I should buckle down with I gotta find a way to make research less painful for me, because it really is my least favorite part.
Intern?
Oh my gosh, I wish I could make them do that for me.
What about you make internet gaming stuff for YouTube? How much do the comments and all the toxicity that can come out of it, does that ever affect you, or do you even think about it?
Oh, I do.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, so we are in a very fortunate position at Polygon, because somehow over the years, I think because some of the videos that we're creating are very funny and positive, and the humor in them doesn't punch down, we have attracted an audience of like-minded people who just want to have a good time. So generally, the comments are actually incredibly positive, which is mind-blowing. Like, it's kind of a known thing at the company that the salespeople are like, what? People really like them. This is so weird. And honestly, I think it's weird too. I'll look at comments on other people's videos and I'm like, oh my God, this is a horrible cesspool. That being said, we have a very robust system of filters set up. Thank you, YouTube, for allowing blocked words. And I, of course, do succumb to temptation and look at those comments because I am a masochist. Like, I'm the person who reads the comments on the articles on Polygon. I don't know why I do this. I am compelled by Satan. But yeah, there's definitely some. And it is the old, the adage that the one negative comment will stand out to you 1,000 times more than 10 positive comments. It is. That's true. The way it is.
I had that explained to me recently. It was like somebody, I think maybe it was Mike Schmidt. Somebody told me, like, we have been trained to always be aware of like the one sound of the saber-toothed tiger. I mean, it's so deep in our training. What's the one thing that can kill us? That's the thing we pay attention to. And somehow those negative comments and the negative emails can trigger that same thing. I think there's some truth to that.
Oh, it so is. Because then it's like, but this one person they don't understand me. They don't understand what I'm doing here. Why don't they understand?
Yeah.
Which is when you go back to the XKCD about not being able to go to bed because someone is wrong on the internet.
Yeah. Well, you guys do a great job. I mean, for listeners of the show, if you have any interest in gaming, you need to check this out because I am one of those fans.
Thank you.
I think it's great the way, and it is fun the way you present the information.
Thank you so much. And that, yeah, one thing that has always been, I think, to our benefit is that our videos are accessible and interesting to people who don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of video games. And that's something that is important to me, is just to make sure that like this doesn't exclude people. It doesn't talk down to people because that wouldn't be any good. And that it's entertaining and good-hearted at the end of the day, because I think a lot of content, like it's so easy to make a video making fun of something or punching down on something. But I think one of my favorite things about what we do is that we contribute something positive to the world. Mm-hmm. In a world where there's so much negativity, especially online, there's a lot of negativity. So that I really enjoy, being able to make things that make people happy in my day job.
Amen, sister. This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by Eero. Never think about Wi-Fi again. Go to eero.com/MPU and get $100 off. If you are in the sound of my voice right now and you've got one of those routers, you know what I'm talking about, the ones you have to reset and the ones your significant other calls you about all the time, then you really need to listen to this ad. The thing is, you can have a better internet life in your home. The single router model just doesn't work in our high bandwidth world. It's all in the physics, like light waves and Wi-Fi waves that don't go through walls very well. And it's kind of like asking a light bulb in your living room to light your master bedroom. It just doesn't work. So you need a distributed system. You just download the Eero app to your iOS or Android devices, and it'll walk you through each step of the process. It's quick, easy, and painless. I got one of these from my sister who doesn't really understand anything about technology, and I had planned to come over and install it, but guess what? She had it installed before I got there. It's just not that hard. And if for any reason you run into a problem, they have an incredible customer support system, so you can call and speak to a Wi-Fi expert within 30 seconds. And if you're not sure how many Eeros are right for your home, they can help with that too. Before Eero, I was just like everybody else, dealing with tons of Wi-Fi problems in the house. I had my wife and kids trained so they could understand how to unplug and reset the router and the Wi-Fi router. And it kind of worked, but it just was never very good. Several years ago, we had a guest on the show who was bragging about Eero. As soon as we finished recording the show, I just got on Amazon and ordered a set for myself, and I've never looked back. They are so easy to install, and they just bring Wi-Fi everywhere. We have not had a problem since I installed them. If you want to solve the Wi-Fi problem in your house, just head over to Eero, that's EERO.com/MPU, and get the Eero base unit and 2 beacons package for $100 off. That also comes with a free year of the Eero Plus service. You won't regret it. I sure don't. And I didn't get that sweet, sweet discount. Once again, that is Eero.com/MPU, EERO.com/MPU to get that $100 off the Eero base unit and 2 beacons package. Don't forget to enter the code MPU and let them know you heard all about it here on the Mac Power Users. Thanks, Eero, for supporting the Mac Power Users.
Yeah, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about podcasting. You mentioned that you were on Polygon show, and I'm curious about how so many big media companies, they have these multiple outlets, right? You're working on video, you're working on articles, and sometimes it feels like podcasts sort of get to ride separate from that, and you can dip into the different content areas that you're working on. And I'm curious how that's been for y'all with that show.
Honestly, I wish that Polygon show were a bigger part of my job because everyone who is on the show is coming from a different part of the website. So I'm from video. We have Ashley O from our social media team. She's our social media manager. And then we have Chelsea, who is our managing editor. and Allegra Frank, who used to be a news reporter at Polygon and has since moved to Vox.com, our enemies, where she's a culture reporter. So that's, I think, one of the biggest issues that we have as a show is that there's no one person whose job it is to make that show happen and to make it good. And I think we do a good job like bringing what we're doing onto it because, you know, it's a podcast about video games and TV and movies. We're watching those and playing those in our off time. So, you know, easy to talk about that. The material kind of writes itself. But I do think it would benefit from just more individualized attention, if that makes sense. We record that in studio, and we have an audio producer named Jelani Carter who edits each episode as well as, you know, doing the tech stuff with recording it, which is wonderful because I briefly edited it. And oh boy, Stephen, you and I have talked about this briefly on Slack before. I hate editing podcasts, but you don't. Tell me why you don't.
I don't know. I don't. There's something hooked up wrong in my brain, I guess.
Ugh, teach me.
Well, it's interesting because you really enjoy editing video. I mean, we just got done talking about that.
Yeah, which I hate.
I guess audio.
I hate editing my YouTube videos. So we just need to hire each other for these tasks, I guess.
Yeah. Wait, we've solved it. We've solved the workflow. Yeah, there's something about, I think, the visual component of it, because with a video, I can see immediately, yes, this change that I've made, it looks good and it flows. And there's all those other elements that you're adding in, like, oh, I can add B-roll here, or I can do this fun animation to punch up this section. Woo! And and, you know, maybe this will betray my noviceness with audio editing, but it was just like, you know, you're listening, or I was listening to a section, or just listening all the way through to all the things that I said myself. I heard myself say them, and then becoming increasingly aware of every and being like, okay, is that an that I'm gonna cut out because that's detracting, or am I just gonna let this one roll? What's going on here? It, of course, being an hour long would just take me a very long time to do. So again, part of it is that I don't have a proficiency built up with podcast editing, but that proficiency never will build up because I don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Wait, what program do you edit in?
I edit in Logic.
Oh, okay. I use Audition.
Yeah, so I use Audition for some normalization stuff. And so one thing that, you know, is really hard to get right in podcast editing, and a lot of things that people really struggle with, and I'm sure you do this too with video when you have different sources, is making audio consistently loud. Or you end up with one person louder than the other, or maybe in one of y'all's videos you have gameplay, and then you come back and you're talking over it, and the volume's all mismatched. That's so hard to get right. And Audition has some nice tools to sort of, hey, make these files all the same loudness. And so I use Audition for that, but then go edit in Logic. But yeah, I understand it. And I think the bit about how it's not visual, that's totally part of it. And I can see why that makes it, it's sort of harder to get your head wrapped around it. We're just looking at, you know, an hour and a half of waveforms, which is what this show will be. I can't actually like see what section where we talked about YouTube comments. I got to go find it. And if I want to move it or change it or edit it, I just got to listen to it all. And so it's definitely a different set of muscles, but I think they're definitely related. And, you know, editing is nothing really but keeping up with the details, it feels like to me, and making judgment calls about those details, like the ums and ahs. Some of them come out, but if you remove all of them, then people sound like robots. And if you clean up all the pauses, then it doesn't feel natural. And you've got to find the zone to be in. And you know, like anything else in our industry, I think it just takes practice. And anyone can get good at it. You just got to have a reason to do it and the patience to work your way through it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think, like you said, the length is part of the issue for me, because with a video, it's very easy to look at a section of it and say, okay, this works, this flows. With a podcast, I think it's something, it's harder for me personally to get the big picture and see how everything is flowing together, so that I can know what to cut. Oh, and it was the worst. It's the worst thing when you cut something and then you realize, oh no, we've referenced that later. You got to put it back.
Or get rid of the reference.
Or get rid of the reference.
Scrub it.
Depending on how annoyed you are.
That is quite tricky. We spoke a couple minutes ago about Rocket, how you're going out, you're sort of the driving force, collecting the links and the stories you are going to talk about. And I wonder if you could explain that a little bit more about what that looks like. Or is Rocket something that's maybe always on the back of your mind, or do you have some set time where you sit down and approach it, or how does that work?
Ooh, confessional time. My boss is asking me how we plan the podcast.
Oh, come on.
So we have a Facebook Messenger group, although I am bullying Christina and Brianna into switching to WhatsApp, not because of Facebook concerns, obviously, because they own WhatsApp too, but because I'm trying very hard to limit my social media usage on my phone. So I don't have Facebook on my phone, and I took Messenger off my phone when there was that story about if Facebook has your phone number, it's visible to people, to friends, and you can't hide it. That annoyed the crap out of me. So I kind of lost my mind and deleted my phone number off Facebook. And then one day when social media was very stressful, I think it was the day that Notre Dame caught fire, people kept messaging me, and I was on a video shoot, and I was like, I can't think about this right now. People need to leave me alone. So I deleted Messenger off my phone. And then because I had taken my phone number off Facebook, it would not send me a code to when I tried to reinstall it. And I was like, oh, well, this is a sign that I'm not meant to have Messenger anymore. So now I'm convincing Brie and Christina to move to WhatsApp because I do have that. And we'll basically just, anytime somebody sees a story that is interesting, we'll drop it in the group chat, which can get confusing sometimes because there'll be a bunch of stories. You know, we talk about 3 every week, maybe 4 if we're pushing it. But at some point, usually, again, we record on Wednesday nights. At some point on Wednesday, it'll be like, crap, we gotta choose. Someone will be like, wait, are we planning the show? And then we will plan the show. And basically choosing what we feel is the biggest story that will, be relevant and interesting that week. And immediately then, Thursday morning, when the show is in the can, a bigger story will break. And that is called the Rocket Rule. It is a curse upon our lives. It's happened so many times now. Thursday breaking news is my hell. But yes, we all basically do our own research, and then I will kind of, because I am the person who introduces the show and transitions from topic to topic, I kind of have a call on what we end up doing, not in a tyrannical way, but Brie likes to talk about cars a lot, and sometimes it's like, I love you, but I can't talk about cars. I don't have the knowledge. And I'll sometimes we will do a car topic, and I will do my best. And Brianna will bring all of the magic to that, and I will bring what I can. And it's very sad.
It's kind of interesting, though, because when you listen to your video workflow, it's highly scripted, so much so that you do a table read, and every word is really gone through several people. Mm-hmm. And then a podcast is very extemporaneous, and it's such a different workflow for you. I was curious, how do you prepare differently for a podcast than a video?
I guess I do a lot of research for both of them. That's a good question. I think kind of what we're trying to do with YouTube right now is just really focus on quality. Because that, especially in the gaming space, YouTube is very, very competitive. There are a lot of people out there making videos about video games. It's very difficult to stand out and do something unique. And when we were doing like the Let's Play style videos and live streams, it was even more difficult to stand out because you're making something that's 30 minutes or an hour long and you're asking people to sit through that, and they already know 50 other channels who are doing that same thing. So in that environment, that just didn't work for us. It didn't make sense to make these very long extemporaneous things rather than devoting our skill and our time, because this is our job, to making something that no one else could make. And with podcasts, of course, it's also an incredibly competitive space. There are 1,000 billion of them. But I think, Rocket obviously has the benefit of being on Relay. Thank you so much. And people enjoy Relay as a brand. But I think people, because of the way that they listen to podcasts, it can be longer and more extemporaneous because they don't have to sit down and put their eyes on something and focus on it for a period of time. Like, I listen to podcasts as I'm walking to the subway and on the subway and while I'm cooking. And if I miss parts of it, frankly, for me, that's okay, because it's just this nice thing that I have to keep me entertained and keep me focused and out of my head while I am doing something else. So I think for podcasts, being able to be extemporaneous works. And I do research. I read the stories and I try to, for me, because I'm, I think, the least experienced person on Rocket, I'll just try to read as much as I can to get on Christina and Bree's level, because they both have so much more hard tech experience than me. And I bring levity and silliness. And all the learning that I have packed into my little brain over the past years of doing this show.
Well, I think something, too, that, and Rocket may be my favorite example of it, is that people listen to podcasts over a long period of time for the personalities. It's not just the stories, but they want to hear the way the three of you are going to take on that story. And I think that y'all have done a really good job at honing a personality for the show that is a blend of the three of you, clearly, but that is unique. And that's something that I think people who are starting out with podcasts struggle to find, but after a while it sort of happens. And I think y'all have done a good job with that. And I have to say, gang, if you haven't listened to an episode of Rocket, and look, I'm not supposed to have favorites, but Simone does the best ad reads on the whole network. I'm just going to say it.
Thank you.
My ad reads, Mike's ad reads, they're okay. Like, they get the job done, but Simone's are truly special. Just listen to just go listen to an episode of Rocket. Don't skip the ads where I'm watching, I know. And you're in for a treat.
Literally any episode of Rocket. And I've told this story before, but I will repeat it for your listeners if they haven't heard it. Rocket was the first podcast I ever did, and because I was the person, like I said, transitioning topic to topic, I was in charge of the ad reads. And Bree was like, okay, so when I listen to podcasts, I like an ad read to have personality, so feel free to improvise with the copy that they give you. And I, a novice podcaster, I took that advice and I ran 10 miles with it, because I look at ad copy and I panic and I black out temporarily, and strange voices come from me. My speech speed varies high and low and everywhere in between. Characters emerge. I lose it. Oh boy. So
they're great.
So what you are hearing cannot be recreated. It is unique to my psychology.
It's a magical thing.
All right, Simone. So now you are a dyed-in-the-wool Apple person. You got all the Macs. You've got the Mac that you're not giving up, even if it catches on fire. You got your iPhone. What are some of your favorite apps that help you get your work done that people may not know about, or maybe they do know about, but they should still get some attention?
Ooh, so the first one I hope will be familiar to anyone who records podcasts, and it is Call Recorder for Skype. I do use Skype to record podcasts, and that is an experience that I don't necessarily appreciate. But what I do appreciate is Call Recorder, because it just freaking works. I bought a license to it. It is a plugin for Skype. I press button And it records not just my audio on my own track, but the guest's audio on their own track. And it is so useful. I can't tell you how many times I've gone on someone else's podcast and like sent them over a call recorder file, and then it's been like, oh my God, yes, it's already timed and everything. Like when you're putting all the tracks in whatever editing program you use, you don't have to worry about syncing because it'll be synced because there are 2 tracks, but you still get your separate personal audio. It's wonderful. So I've introduced it to everyone at my work, and they absolutely love it because we can use it for recording interviews, which is something we're, increasingly doing on the video team. And it's just so nice to be able to sit down with a subject on Skype and not have to worry about, having them set things up on their end. It's not fun. But if you can just say, okay, like this isn't audio I'll necessarily use in a video. I just want to record this interview for myself. It works every dang time. And it's just so simple. So it's an absolute lifesaver. You guys use it too, right?
I think like the whole podcasting industry is built on
call recorder.
People complaining about Skype and buying call recorder licenses.
Good. Perfect.
Both.
For a reason, folks. It just works. And then for game capture, I was against this at first. I used Game Capture HD on my own, and I loved it because it has a very nice, dark interface, big, easy to read buttons. That's what I use on my own. And then I changed to OBS because a lot of people at work here prefer using OBS to capture. And I have to say, I think I am converted. The interface is not nearly as nice. It's kind of hideous. It looks kind of janky. It just looks like it's a very old looking app. But what OBS does wonderfully is it makes it super easy to set up scenes and then save those scenes. So earlier when I was talking about capturing gameplay with a picture-in-picture or capturing just gameplay and audio, with OBS, you can make a bunch of presets for whatever kind of video you're recording. And then you can choose which one and bring in different feeds, basically. So maybe I have a feed that is the game, and then another feed that is the camera that I'm using to capture myself, and then another feed that is the microphones that I'm using to record my audio. You can put those all in under a preset scene and save it, and it will be there next time you want it to work. And I just really appreciate the ease of making videos happen with that. And especially for our streams. I don't know if you guys watched our E3 streams this year.
Yeah, some of them.
We have a little device called Stream Deck that has a bunch of buttons on it. And basically you can use it to queue up a scene in OBS. So we built a bunch of presets, or I should say my coworker Pat Gill built a bunch of presets for moments that happened during press conferences. So like something awkward would happen and he would press a button and then the word yikes would come up all over the screen or something like that. So it's basically a way for you to produce a video or a live video without like having a person sitting in a booth looking at a bunch of different screens and doing a lot of very complicated stuff because we just don't have the manpower for that. And OBS makes that possible. And it works with Elgato. So you can still, without using, let me back up. Game Capture HD is the proprietary program of Elgato, which is the device that we use to capture gameplay. But Elgato works with OBS. So you can use the good device with the program that I like. And that is wonderful.
It's really remarkable to me how much innovation there is in streaming right now. Like stuff like you're explaining, it's like problems that are kind of new. And for people, democratized video distribution, and they're coming out with these solutions where you don't need a guy in a booth. And it's just kind of crazy how fast this is happening.
Yeah, like even for us, a year or so ago, I don't think we didn't have it set up as nicely as we do now. And it's just very very cool and good, very cash money, as our interns would say, to be able to spin up a stream and have all of these things prepared and ready to go. Again, without booking the control room here at our studios and finding somebody to run that stream and all of those, I think, time and access issues that even at Vox Media we've struggled with, just because, we're like six different networks, all in the same building, all using the same studio space. We have to share. So for us, it's better to be nimble and be able to spin up our own streams and record our own videos rather than wait for support, broader tech support from the studio system here.
And it lets people getting started at home just download some stuff and get started, right? Like the barrier to entry for live video streaming, I mean, even 5 or 6 years ago was insurmountable as an individual person. And now,
oh my God,
it's just a download away. And maybe you need some hardware if you're doing something specific. And I think that's really exciting because it means that more people can share what they're doing.
Yeah, it's so easy. And it's so much easier to make something that looks nice, which is wonderful and so crucial no matter what level of content creator you are.
Yeah, it is crazy how far this has come. And I feel like this is something that's still happening. I mean, there's certain areas of this technology where things have kind of resolved. But with the live streaming stuff, there's a bunch of innovation still happening.
Yeah, and I mean, streaming on YouTube, what an interesting thing. But yeah, it's quite democratic, I think, in terms of platforms, because you've got YouTube and you've got Twitch, and those are the places where people live and where viewers will come to watch your stuff. So I think it can be hard to compete there, but a hit will get you in front of a lot of eyes on those platforms.
Well, Simone, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Definitely getting in here before show 500. That was very important to me.
Thank goodness. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Like I said earlier, I'm always fascinated to hear how people get their work done with all this Apple gear, and you guys get a lot of work done over there. I mean, you talk about video games. But video games is hard work. Everybody I know that works in the industry or writes about the industry, they work a lot harder than most of the other people I know.
Yeah, the game industry is brutal. And so is media. But I love it.
You're pulling it off, and we're so happy to have you on the show. Gang, if you're listening and you have any interest in gaming, Simone has really, and her team has really created a nice little safe place to go learn about video games and have a good time. So head over, to Polygon if you're interested. Of course, listen to Rocket on Relay. One of my favorite takes on the tech industry is over on the Rocket podcast. So you can get that every week. Anywhere else people should go to look for you, Simone?
Oh, well, youtube.com/Polygon, of course, for our videos. And I am on Twitter at DoomQuasar, which is a place where I am. And that does not fit into my workflow. It, in fact, detracts from it. But there I shall be, tweeting until I die.
Still is an awesome Twitter handle. I mean, let's be honest.
Thank you.
You win. All right. Thanks to our sponsors, 1Password, Smile, Linode, and Eero. And we will see you all next week.